My plan was to get on here and immediately start talking about how great the outdoor opportunities are in Missouri, across the Midwest, right now. Early May, this is as good as it gets for spring fishing. Turkeys are still fired up. Had one at 10 yards this morning, couldn't get them across the fence. There's still mushrooms to be found. Like, it is a great time to be outdoors. But in bigger news, Jesus has a new team. We have a Pope from Chicago. Shags, you've begun against Notre Dame in college, and now you have to deal with the fact that the Pope is a Bears fan. I like our chances moving into the next year. I'm Brandon Butler.
Well, I've enjoyed the memes saying Chicago got a Pope before they got a quarterback that could throw for 4,000 yards.
We got them both now.
I'm Nathan Shags McLeod.
Hey guys, I'm Kevin Rhodes with B4 Outdoors.
And welcome to the Driftwood Outdoors podcast. Now, remember, if you like what you're watching and you enjoy our content, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Driftwood Outdoors TV, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Driftwood Outdoors so we can keep creating this content for you. And I don't know about you guys, but speaking of social media, my social media feed has been blowing up with the news that House Republicans have approved an amendment now authorizing the sale of federal lands in Utah and Nevada.
Yeah, politics are wonky right now with public lands and what's going on with some of our federal workers. Ryan Zinke, who recently got an award from TRCP, and I saw a bunch of conservation folks throwing their hands up. Why is Ryan Zinke getting an award for that? Well, today, Ryan Zinke, who was the Secretary of Interior under President Trump in the first term, now returned to Congress in Montana. He said, "This is my San Juan Hill. No public lands will be sold on my watch." So we've got some big guns on the Republican side, and let's be clear. Like, it doesn't matter how you feel about this. This is only a Republican issue. The Democrats are not trying to sell any of our public lands, which is crazy. The party of Theodore Roosevelt is the one trying to divest Theodore Roosevelt's legacy, but it is what it is. And thankfully, we've got some big guns on both sides of the aisle. Martin Heinrich, senator down in New Mexico, working hard for us. Definitely Ryan Zinke being with us is big. So yeah, it's just dirty politics, man. They're slipping it in. It's hundreds of thousands of acres, which doesn't sound like a lot when you think we have 640 million. But once you lose that chip, you never get it back. Like, it's only downhill from here.
How's that song go? This land is your land. This land is our land. This land is now Monsanto's land.
Yeah. Or some Chinese company.
Or
the highest
PGE.
bidder.
This is no trespassing land from now on. It's pretty wild that we even have to have this conversation. That why are we selling one of our richest resources that everyone owns? I can't believe, because our circles are all very much outdoors conservationists. I'm more shocked that there's not an uproar just from the general public of the idea of them losing public land.
See, I'm not that surprised by it, man, because I had this conversation yesterday. When you think about hunters, that's roughly 6% of the population in the country. And of that 6%, how many of those people are in the East or in the Midwest, portions of both where there's not a lot of public land? I mean, right here in the heartland, Missouri, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, not robust with public land. That is like the breadbasket of big buck hunting, so you got a lot of hunters here. The number of people in this country that care about how many acres of public land there are in Utah is far, far smaller than we probably think. Like the 8 million people in Chicago, it's probably a small number of them that care about BLM land in Nevada. So we've got a huge task in front of us to educate people on why, it's better to have these lands than it is to have a one-time payment that we'll never recoup from.
And sometimes I think that perhaps I'm in the bottle too much to read the ingredients on the outside, because part of me is like, what are we even
Mm-hmm.
considering or thinking, or what? I can't wrap my head around the stupidity of the idea just so some rich people can get even more rich and take away beautiful pieces of environment and nature away from us. It's so frustrating.
Well, if somebody came up to you and said, "Hey, Shags, you'll have better schools, you'll have better roads, we can probably lower the cost of healthcare if we sell off some public lands on the far side of Australia." Like, how would you feel about that? You probably like, I don't care, sell them off. Like, I'm never going there anyways.
Yeah, I
Unfortunately,
mean that's
I think a lot of people see like the Rocky Mountain West that way as well. Like, they're never going there. Like, they don't care. Sell it off. Like, what good is it just sitting out there? And that's the crowd that we have to convince, of the value, of the importance of these. And I think that, as much as I hate the idea, like, opening them up to a little bit more multi-use, a little bit more, you know, money making opportunities, because that endears people to them. When you tie money to it, then there becomes more value to it,
well,
unfortunately.
and in the article too, they're talking about, oh no, it'll be used for low income housing, and it's going to be great for communities and those type of things. And call me, I don't believe it will.
Mm-mm.
And even with your analogy, I guess in my old age, I'm just kind of like, I don't believe it. I don't think our schools are going to get any better.
No, I
It's
don't either. I'm just saying that's what they're just selling it on.
yeah.
That's the story they're selling it to people who
What
will never know like what it actually holds in value. They're just selling them this lie about like what they're gonna get. In reality, it'll go to some slush fund, and it won't be the case at all.
No, it will be something where you'll never be able to use it again. There will be no housing on it. It will have oil pumps or a mine, or they'll be digging holes to get some precious jewel or something out of it. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
no, we'll sell it to a company that makes missiles, and then we'll use it as a place to test missiles.
What do you
Yeah,
think, Kevin? You've been over there kind of quiet while as we're
yeah. I
ranting
mean,
about our government selling off our public lands.
in hopes of not opening my mouth and saying something stupid or to alienate myself to your fans or your listeners, but it's frustrating because they're saying they're gonna build low income housing. Well, hey, congratulations. Here's a house for free. You're going to go live in the desert in Utah with no amenities. You're going to be 5 hours from the nearest town, and no one's going to want to live there. So I agree with you guys. I think it's just it's a ploy just to get some money in some pockets. And it's frustrating because Brandon's right. There's a lot of people across the country from the Midwest to the East Coast that don't have a clue what those lands are worth and what it's worth for wildlife, not necessarily just hunting, but just for the environment in general. And so it's a sad day to see us losing public ground.
Man, this morning, so last night.
What is happening?
Whoa. All right. That was weird. Uh so last night I was out on my back patio, and I was able to roost a bird in like my back 40. So I have 40 acres, and that doesn't happen very often. Went out there this morning, blew a bird out of a tree, thought that was the bird, ended up sitting down anyways. About 10 minutes later, bird starts gobbling. Lauren's on the gun, I'm on the call, and we had two gobblers within 10 yards. They were right behind us on the fence, but like they wouldn't come across the fence. And then the fence is probably about 3 feet high, and they wouldn't fly up over it. And they stood on that fence 10 yards behind us, spitting and drumming so close when they were gobbling. It vibrated your body. Uh and that's the value of public land, is that if we were hunting on public land, I'd have been able to walk to wherever I needed to go to get those birds, but I'm forced to stay on my side of the fence, and there is no just taking off and going, which is what I learned to appreciate from public lands when I was living out west. And it's painful when you're sandwiched into 40 acres, but you could be on a public piece that's 40,000 acres. So it's so valuable.
Well, and
Yeah.
if they sell off a couple of parcels, or it's like the one of the representatives was like, it's not even a third of what we have. Yeah, but once that's sold and they know they can, then there's nothing stopping them from selling them all.
Oh no, yeah, and like
They'd all be gone.
you just want to ask that person, that representative, like behind closed doors, like, all right, man, like, what's the price of your soul? Like, what are you getting for this? Like, where are you trying to go here?
No, that's true. It's scary. Well, let's talk about some funner things. I want to hear about before outdoors, Kevin. Give me your origin story. I don't even know where you're out of. I was trying to like cram, like I was back in college before we jumped on here and reading your website and your mission and all that, and it looks fascinating to me. So, yeah, kind of give me the rundown on how it all started and where you guys are at.
Cool. Yeah, certainly. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to come on and spread our message and just talk outdoors. And so, first off, we are in Elmer, Missouri, which even if you knew that we were in Elmer, Missouri, you wouldn't know where Elmer, Missouri is. We are, if you're familiar with Northeast Missouri, kind of the biggest town, city up here is Kirksville. In Adair County, and then Macon County is just south of that, and we are in northwest Macon County, not too far from La Plata, if you're familiar with that area. And then, so the best thing to do is I just tell people we're about 85 miles north of Columbia, up Highway 63, and so we're pretty far north, not quite to Iowa, but some guys say they can hit a 9-iron that far, but I don't know, maybe Tiger Woods can. But so, but we've been here in our lodge here since 2019. We started our organization in 2018, and the mission of B4 Outdoors is to provide transformative outdoor adventures to veterans, first responders, law enforcement, and their families. And specifically through hunting and fishing, but we do dabble in some more recreational outdoor activities like whitewater rafting and canoeing and that kind of stuff. But like I said, we started in 2018 with just a vision that I had dating back probably close to 2012 or 2013. I was living in South Carolina, which is where my family's originally from. My father was in the military. We moved all over the world as a kid and teenager. And then I started my love of hunting and fishing as a young kid in North Carolina and South Carolina on a family farm. And so, I just progressed through my hunting career, killing spikes and then forkhorns and 6 points and, starting with jakes and now longbeards, just the normal progression. But in 2012, 2013, somewhere right in there, I got invited to mentor some kids on a dove hunt through the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources, which is their conservation department, and I just fell in love with helping people, helping kids get into the outdoors. And that was kind of a one-off thing that season. And then I became friends with the leader of that department within their organization. And one thing led to another. And the next thing I was doing duck hunts and deer hunts and turkey hunts and for about 2 or 3 years. And kind of the culminating deal was I was in a duck club in Columbia, South Carolina, which is right outside Fort Jackson, which is a huge Army base there in South Carolina. And the leader of the owner of the duck club was a retired Air Force colonel, and he wanted to do a wounded warriors hunt. And I was the first one to raise my hand and said, heck yeah, let's do it. Let me know what I need to do. I'll be there. I'll come early. I'll stay late, and we ended up having about 10 or 12 guys come over from Fort Jackson, and they were all Afghanistan and Iraq guys. And I got to sit in the duck blind for 3 hours that morning with a guy who'd been over there a couple times and he was getting ready to leave the service. But we had a great morning. And so that right there kind of just jump started everything. My passion for helping people get in the outdoors, specifically kids and veterans. So I had a landscaping company at the time, and it just kind of felt like it was time to dump that and move into a new chapter of my life. And I knew I wanted to do something in the hunting industry and to help people as well. And so in 2017, I sold my business and packed my bags, sold my house, and went out to a little place called Mesa, Colorado on the western slope near Grand Junction and went to hunting guide school. And, here we were, 5'10", 240 or 50 pounds at the time, and trying to learn how to be a cowboy and ride horses in the mountains and take in. And man, it was awesome. I was there for 8 weeks. I learned a ton about the industry, about guiding and outfitting. But the biggest thing, and originally my plan was to stay out west and guide for elk and that kind of stuff. And I learned real quick that God made certain guys to be cowboys, and at 5'10", 240, I wasn't one of them. But getting up and down off that horse every day was rough for a whitetail and turkey guy. But I did actually stay out there, and I worked on a ranch, and I helped with the hunting guide school for a while. And then when hunting season rolled around, I went to Montana and guided elk in Montana for archery season. At a camp that was right on the side of a mountain, and we basically just walked out the door. We did everything on foot, so that was pretty awesome. I realized at that point, even though I loved elk hunting, that I was a whitetail and turkey guy, and so I decided to move back east. I went back to South Carolina at first, but I kind of knew my passion was going to be somewhere in the Midwest. And I'd hunted in Missouri before, thanks to some friends that have a farm in Callaway County. And I fell in love with it when I went out there a couple times to hunt. And so just kind of everything fell into place, and I just landed here in Macon County. I'll try and keep this short and sweet, because there's a whole lot of things that went into it. But I landed here in Macon County, and we had our first season in 2018, and then we bought our lodge in 2019, and we've grown. So I was a part-time for-profit outfitter and then a part-time non-profit outfitter when we first started, because we had to pay the bills somehow. And so we used the money from the paid hunts to fund the nonprofit hunts. But we've since stopped that. We're a full-time nonprofit now. But the first 5 years, when we were half and half, we averaged about 20 veterans, kids, and first responders every year. Last year in 2024, we did 48, I believe it was, 47 or 48. And for 2025, we're on track to host around 70 kids, veterans, first responders, and law enforcement officers all across the country on different events, different hunts, alligator hunts, bear hunts, salmon fishing trips on Lake Michigan, spoonbill snagging, Lake of the Ozarks, Alabama deer hunts. So we try and do a little bit of everything. It's pretty cool.
So do you go on all these, or are you just kind of choreographing and getting people in contact with other people, or is your organization that large now that you have satellite places in different states?
Right. Yeah. So basically, I handle all the organizing of all the trips and all the events and stuff. And then everything here in Missouri, I shouldn't say everything in Missouri, excuse me, everything here out of our lodge, I guide, I do the cooking, all that kind of stuff. But then we have a network of landowners, other outfitters, guys that have hunted with us previously that want to give back. They'll call me up and say, hey, I just retired from the fire department. I've got a 120-acre farm in, Alabama or wherever, and I want to host 2 hunters for a weekend next year. Or one case, I ran into a guy at Casey's gas station one day up here, and he said, "Is that your truck?" And I thought, "Oh goodness, did I cut him off? Did something fly out and hit his windshield?" And long story short, he was having a hard time finding veteran organizations to help him out because he wanted to host a hunt at his farm in Knox County. And it just happened to be coincidence that there I was at the gas station and he saw my truck, which I've got a big sticker across the back that says what we do. And so he stopped me and we started chatting, and 4 years later we've had 8 hunters at his place. So we've got a little bit of everything. I don't get to go on all of them. I try and go at least once just to kind of see the operation, see how things go, and make sure that when somebody says I've got a cabin or a RV or something that you can stay in, to make sure it is inhabitable. I don't want to send veterans or kids or something on a hunt and then sleep in a cockroach infested leaky RV or something like that. So I don't mind. We don't have to have 5-star lodging every time. Some guys like to camp, some guys like to stay in RVs, some guys want to get a hotel, whatever it is, but we just want to make sure everything is safe and clean and make sure it's done right before we send guys on a trip.
So I couldn't help but notice on your website too, it said Pennsylvania to Florida to Minnesota to Kansas to Oregon, and points in between. Oregon is my home state. So what was the hunt or the trip you sent the people out to Oregon for?
Well, we have not done a hunt in Oregon yet. I've got a guy. He's an Army veteran, and he's hunted with us twice. And he brought his wife back one time, and she actually killed her first whitetail with a bow with us. But he is in Eastern Oregon, and so he was like, let's try and do a hunt out at our place. And since then, they've had some health issues, unfortunately. So we haven't been able to make that happen yet, but it's on our bucket list. They have a lot of land. They've got a ranch. Their family has a ranch, and it backs up to some public ground, which is what we were just talking about. And they are pretty prolific elk hunters, gun elk hunters. And so that's kind of the hope, is to be able to get out there and do an elk hunt with them.
So follow-up question to that. So when you go out of state, you're going to send someone to Oregon. Now, is that like you're trying to find an Oregonian veteran or first responder, or are you out of Missouri where you're just sending these hunters all across the country? How does one get on one of these out-of-state hunts?
Yeah, so our typical, standard operating procedure, for lack of a better term, is we have an online application process. So we post all of our events, all of our hunts, fishing trips, outdoor adventures on social media and our website, and then they can apply through our application process online. And there's a section in there that says, "Tell us about yourself." And so they give us their story about serving in Iraq or Afghanistan, or being on a police force. And, I was on the SWAT team and got hurt, or, I was a fireman and fell through a floor, and, those kind of stories. And so then we choose who we feel is most deserving, and they don't necessarily have to be in that state. We will send them across the country or across town. And let me back up. We try and do this at no expense to the hunter. So, we try and pay for as much as we can pay for. Sometimes, travel's not included, just depending on what it is. Sometimes we have a sponsor that says, "I'll pay for this trip." Or sometimes the outfitter or the landowner will say, "Hey, I'll pay for somebody to fly out here," or, so things vary. It's just kind of depends on the situation. And some people want to say, "Hey, I want an Alabama firefighter," or "I want an Oregonian veteran," or "I only want an Army veteran," or "I want to help kids of police officers." So, there's a wide variety of opportunities and chances for guys to go on hunts. And sometimes it's at the request of the landowner or whoever's hosting the trip.
Man, that's awesome. Brandon, you're muted.
Where do you guys get most of your applicants?
So when we first started out in 2018, we weren't very well known, obviously. We were a startup, and we didn't have much online presence or social media preference or presence. So we kind of partnered with some other organizations like the Fallen Outdoors, now MoVets, and that kind of stuff. Some other organizations, and I would just call those the leaders of those organizations and say, hey, I've got a hunt for this, on these dates. I need 2 guys or 2 people, send them to me. Well, since then, over the last 7 years, we've grown quite a bit, and we've started a network of, people on social media and then throughout the country as well. And so people learn about us through various ways. And so, we'll get guys to apply, we'll share it on Facebook, and then Bobby from Alabama will share it on Facebook, and, the power of social media. But then we also take requests, for lack of a better term, or references. Somebody might say, hey, I've got this guy who goes to my church. He's hasn't hunted since before he went to Iraq. He could use a weekend in the woods. So we do a little bit of that kind of stuff. We'll take guys like that. Or people will call us. For example, last summer, I got an email from a lady in Kansas, and her son, let me back up. Her husband and her father's son had passed away a few years ago from injuries sustained in Iraq. And so the kid gets full benefits from his father's service. It is recorded by the VA that his death is because of his injuries in Iraq. So he's considered a Gold Star kid, but he was 12 and never hunted before, and his dad had been passed away for a few years, and here he is, in school, and his buddies are talking about, hey, I'm going to go hunting this weekend with my dad, and all these kids are talking about hunting. Well, he didn't have anybody to take him, and so they weren't originally from Kansas, where they lived at the time, and no family or really close friends. So his mom reached out to us, and we were able to make it happen, and we brought him up here for Missouri Youth Weekend. And we had a bunch of stuff donated from Ozio Gear. The Camouflage Company gave him a bunch of clothes. Rocky Boots gave him boots. We got a gun donated from a pawn shop. Vortex sent binoculars and rangefinders and stuff. And the kid went home with about $5,000 worth of gear, and he was able to harvest a deer. So he shot a little doe, and he was tickled to death. And so we get a lot of guys and hunters and fishermen from a lot of different various sources. So it's pretty neat.
That's awesome. I always love hearing those success stories. Do you have another one that just comes to mind?
Yeah. So one guy in particular, his name's Ray. I won't use his last name, just out of respect for him. I don't know if he wants me telling this story or not, but he was one of those guys that he struggled a lot back, after being in the wars over there in Iraq and Afghanistan. And his wife actually reached out to me and said he could use some time. She found us on social media somehow, and so she gave me his phone number, and I called him, and we talked. And we do a big, what we call our V1R hunt every year. It stands for Veteran First Responder, and we do it in October for the antlerless antlerless gun season that we have in October. And we bring in about 6 guys from various backgrounds. But I told him, I said, hey, look, we've got this hunt. There's going to be other veterans and first responders here. We'll pay for your tags. We'll pay, you'll come and stay in our lodge. Meals and all that are covered. And he's like, okay, yeah, I haven't hunted in 10 years or whatever, but I want to learn how to hunt again so I can take my kids. And I was like, well, great. Come on, man. We'll help you out. Come up for a long weekend. Well, about 2 weeks before the hunt, he just went radio silent on me. And, guys are texting me, what gear do I bring? And, what's the weather like? And do I need a cooler? Or what are we doing with the processing of the meat? All these guys are texting me. Well, this guy was just ghosted us. And so I reached out to his wife, and she was like, yeah, he's having a lot of anxiety and about coming. And I said, well, please, please, please encourage him to come. And so he said he would, but we were unsure if he was going to show up or not. And so Thursday afternoon, when everybody was supposed to arrive, here came the sixth truck down the driveway, and it was him. And this isn't really a success story about shooting an animal or anything like that, but this is about the power and the healing of deer hunting and the outdoors. And so when we got there, everybody's shaking hands and telling who they are and that kind of stuff. And Ray just kind of stayed in the background. He kind of just stayed outside the circle. And so he eventually kind of started to lighten up a little bit on Thursday. But also on Thursday night, we bring in a lot of local landowners that let us hunt their land, and local business owners and stuff that support us. And so we probably had about 30 or 35 people here for dinner on Thursday night, to include us and the hunters, our volunteers and the hunters. And so Ray again kind of like went into the corner and just kind of didn't say a whole lot. Kind of just overwhelmed, I guess, maybe. But anyway, I'll get to the point. So eventually he shoots his two does, and next thing you know, it's Saturday night and we're standing around the campfire and we cannot get Ray to shut up. I mean, he was the life of the party, telling jokes, slapping high fives with the other hunters when they were bringing their deer in and all that stuff. And all we did was we gave him an opportunity to come. We don't have psychiatrists or therapists or anything like that. We try and, just be good dudes and, try and lead by example. And, we pray for them at the meals, but, we're not overly religious. We're not pushing that, I should say. But we have Christian values in our organization. And so I think guys, just when they get here and they get around the campfire and they get around like-minded people and they just see that, we're trying to help, and the power of sitting in a deer stand and just relaxing and not having to deal with the everyday stresses of life and, work and home and that kind of stuff. It gives these guys a chance to recover and relax and kind of just let things fade away. And I think that's what happened to Ray. He had so much built up, from stress over, just living life and coming back from his service. And he just needed a weekend with the boys at deer camp. And, I still keep in contact with him, and he's taking his kids hunting and fishing. He coaches his son's little league baseball team now. And so I'm not saying all of that is because of us, but I like to think that we played a little part in that.
Yeah, the power of the outdoors is legit. The healing power of just being outside, whether it's walking of your favorite stream or sitting in a deer stand. I mean, there's nothing like walking in at dark and sitting there and watching everything around you come alive when the sun rises. And
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it definitely makes you appreciate a little bit more and puts things in perspective.
Do you guys do any duck hunting?
Does. So up here we do not. I was an avid duck hunter years ago back in South Carolina. I had duck boats and more decoys than you could haul in a 16-foot enclosed trailer. I mean, I was Mr. Ducks Unlimited back home, but I don't do it here just because I'm so invested on the deer hunting side of things with our lodge and our farm and our leases. And also, we're in the northern zone, so a lot of that season conflicts with, deer season. It, comes in usually youth gun weekend, and then, it's right in the middle of regular gun season. So it's hard for us to do that. We do occasionally have some waterfowl trips. I've befriended an outfitter over at what is it now? Los Bluff, that's the new name over there north of St. Joe, the wildlife.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Which I didn't know we were allowed to say that anymore. I thought that was maybe with Trump now we can say the word squaw now.
A historical reference. No one, it was
there
called
you go.
Squaw
there
Creek
you go.
for a long time. They just changed the name, but you can still throw down a beat box and eat hot dogs at the Trail of Tears State Park. Yeah. If you want to go celebrate where like a mass genocide occurred,
That's right.
you know, get you some. Yeah, get you some
Summer vacation, baby. Let's go jump in the
hoot
man-made
and
lake and
holler.
camp and have the
Yeah,
best summer ever at Trail of the Tears
yeah.
State Park.
Yeah, that's right. So anyway, I befriended an outfitter over there. He's got an outfitting business right outside the refuge, like a lot of guys do, and we've been on 2 snow goose hunts with him and a waterfowl hunt with him. And then just recently, I made contact with a guy in Arkansas who has a place called Freedom Lodge Outdoors, and he's in kind of like north central Arkansas, and he's going to host 2 waterfowl hunts for us next year. A 4-person, men only, veteran only duck hunt in late January, and then in late February, the first weekend in March, that overlap, we are doing 7 female veterans on a snow goose hunt at his lodge. And so I've got a lady who's volunteering to lead that trip for us. She's a Marine veteran, and she's pretty much a badass. She paddled the entire Missouri River by herself and wrote a book about it. And her name's Amanda, and she's pretty awesome chick. You don't want to cross her in the woods,
Well, that's
that's
a
for
good
sure.
story, man.
Is that a snow goose you have on the wall behind you there?
That is actually a tundra swan. Let me see if I can move this so the light's not in the way. But it's, yeah, I killed that on the Outer Banks of North Carolina probably 15 years ago with some buddies of mine. And you actually have to draw a tag out there to be able to kill them. And that's actually, the tundra swans are different than the swans we see here in Missouri. Those are trumpeter swans, which are illegal to shoot. But the tundra swans, there's a couple places you can hunt them. I think you can actually hunt them maybe in Washington or California, and then I know on the Outer Banks of North Carolina are a couple places. There might be a few others scattered in
The
between.
reason I asked about the waterfowl is because at Retrieving Freedom, we have clients that want to see their dogs become hunting dogs as well. It's not a lot of them,
Right.
but not a lot, but some. In fact, Shags and Savannah have one of our career change dogs, and Savannah's even interested in doing some waterfowl hunting, and she's a veteran, so it'd be pretty cool to pair her up with a mentor that could get her out and teach her a little bit about tuning old Duke up for. I'll tell you what Duke's not going to be. He's not going to be a shed dog. I got a pile of sheds.
He's still walking around here pouting. Yeah. He misses that 40 acres and that lake to himself. You can tell. He's like, what is this small house bullshit? Man. I had free reign of like just running around, jumping in the lake and swimming and eating deer antlers. And now he's just stuck back here in the house full of nothing but rules.
So we give dogs deer antlers as treats at Retrieving Freedom. People bring them in.
Right.
You can buy them at PetSmart. You can buy them anywhere.
Yeah.
And so Duke has been like trained to chew on these bones. Like that's what he was taught as a young dog. So he comes here to stay while they're back in Oregon. And I've got, about a 3-foot tall pile of shed antlers next to my wood stove. We came in the house and they were just scattered throughout the house. Like for fun, he just like moved all of them. And then I think the other dogs were like, okay, cool. I didn't know we could mess with these. And then they all just proceeded to chew up my shed pile.
Oh goodness.
So maybe he'll be a great shed dog. Maybe he's got the like nose for it now. So, hey, I want to go all the way back to when you were talking about Montana. So I lived in Montana for 4 years. Learned so much about public lands and really how to apply them to the Midwest. Like what I learned out west was so valuable to hunting in the Midwest. I think if people were to take a couple trips out west, give public land a try, because if you think it's a 3,000 acre fish and wildlife area that you're going to have to share with like 20 other people, it's quite different when you get out there and you're talking about millions of acres. So you learn the value of going deeper, staying out longer. And you start applying that here where most people don't do that. And it really elevates you as a hunter. So where were you? What part of the state were you elk hunting? You don't have to say exactly, but like about
No, we were in the Little Snowies,
Yeah.
so not too far from Lewistown,
Oh
and
man,
so
I got bleeped
I
out.
think
I got bleeped out on the Meat Eater podcast for saying that I would move to Lewistown. They're like, "Ah, yeah, we're not going to say that." So they
really,
bleeped me out. Yeah. Lewis, yeah,
wow.
Don Thomas, who's kind of my the guy I look at who got me started as an outdoor rider, at least gave me the confidence to do it. He's lived in Lewistown. Lewistown was part of my sales territory. You've got Big
Awesome.
Spring Creek there. Um, Funny
Yeah.
story, when I first got to Montana, I lived in Billings. It was probably 95 degrees out. So I was going on a date and really wanted to impress. So we hiked into the Snowies, found this trail, went in, just had shorts, like one blanket, a tent.
And they lived up to the name, didn't
Oh
they?
my God, man. Like walked in there and it was like a Disney movie. Elk, bears, we're in this valley, catching little brook trout out of the creek and skewering them on a stick and roasting them over a fire. And then the sun went down. And I had a t-shirt and shorts and a dog and one blanket. And she took the blanket and rolled up like a burrito. And I laid next to the fire with that dog, like spooning all night, just trying to stay alive. It it must have dropped to like freezing. And I was just on the ground next to a fire in a t-shirt and shorts, holding a pit bull that had no fur himself. It was like holding a bald pig and trying to get warmth out of it. But I learned my
Wow.
lesson about like living in the high desert and traveling to, the snowy mountains.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's a beautiful place, though. I mean, I've got a buddy. He was in the Marine Corps, and we met years ago. He's got a tree service now in Billings, and he hunts a lot in the Snowies. And I was supposed to go out there next week to do some turkey hunting and shed hunting with him, but I've had some family medical issues come up, and I've got to stay home and actually go back to South Carolina for a couple days here
What's that
soon.
guy's name?
Amadeo
Yeah,
Lampier.
that's not. So my
So
my old neighbor out there, I think he'd be a little bit older, but he was a veteran and he hunts in the snowies and he kills
yeah,
big bucks every year.
yeah, this guy he's originally from very far eastern Montana. You know, kind of in the grassland ranching area out there. I forget the name of his hometown, but his dad married a French woman, and so that's why his first name is Amadeo. And it just so happened that his dad's last name was Lampier, so it's kind of funny. He's got two French names, and but he's this big 6'4", just brute of a man, former Marine. That he doesn't look like a little French dude.
So when I lived out there, I had to work away from home most of the time. I was in like a three
Mhm.
week cycle that took me to western Montana, like Missoula area, and then central Montana, Bozeman, Helena, Great Falls, and then eastern Montana. And all those little towns out there, from Glendive to Miles City, Sydney, Plentywood, Jordan, like,
Yep. Yeah, Glendive that's the name of his
uh
town. When you said it, the light bulb went
so that's
off.
where I caught my first
Yep.
paddlefish ever. So the paddlefish run up
Nice.
out there. It's different than what we do here. Out there, you line the banks of the Yellowstone River right below this diversion dam at Glendive, and the paddlefish can't get any further. So you just
Okay.
launch your, 1 ounce sinker with a treble hook as far as you can, and then you just rip it like back across the river. And then when you hook into one, like everybody just scatters down because it looks like one of those scenes from Alaska where there's, shoulder. It looks like opening day of trout season in Missouri. And then when you hook into one,
Right.
everybody just bows out and lets you bring it in. But that's your fish. You get to
That's cool.
tag it. And if you'll let the Fish and Wildlife people take the eggs, now this was 20 years ago. I don't know if they still do it, but they would clean it for you in exchange for the eggs, which was pretty cool.
Wow. Hmm. Yeah. Now we just toss the eggs in the dumpster so the Russians don't get
Yeah,
them.
not us. Shags is part of the KGB. He's
Oh,
dumpster diving those eggs, selling them off. How do you think he gets those nice sleeveless shirts?
Hey
yeah.
man, this one's got a collar
That's
on it.
that's underground paddlefish row money right there.
Yeah.
I was running around like a madman today before this because we're going down. Kevin, I joke that I have a vacation estate, and it's a single wide trailer outside of Montauk State Park. So I've been out of town, out of state for well over a month. So you can only imagine what my little lot of yard looks like down there during spring. So I've been frantically trying to load everything up. I didn't have time to put sleeves on for this. I apologize. I came in, sat right down, and as soon as we get done, I got to go back to
Dude,
packing because I'm leaving right after
don't
work
apologize.
tomorrow.
That's
So
our
yeah,
former merch right there. Just modeling it. Everybody get them a Shags fishing shirt in the future.
There you go.
them sleeves just get in the way of my
Well,
fishing, man. That's
God
the
gives you
problem.
guns like that. He doesn't expect you to cover them up.
Brian, let's go. So, do you guys do fundraisers then, or is it all donation based? Like, how do you guys get some of your money to do these hunts?
Yeah, in every way possible. We've got fundraisers going on that we range. We're starting to dabble in sporting clay tournaments now. I met a guy last year who that's what they do, and he kind of gave me the formula for that. And so we're doing one on June 7th in Georgia, and then we are doing one on June 28th in I'll just say Troy, Missouri, because it's in a little place called Old Monroe, Missouri, and nobody really knows where that is. And probably a lot of people don't know where Troy is either, but it's kind of north of St. Louis. And so we're doing those this year, and then we do a golf tournament up here in Macon County every year. This will be our sixth one. And then we do all kinds of little raffles, some on Facebook, and we'll do other little things here or there to try and raise some funds. And we started this year. I met a guy who actually came on a hunt with us, and he is a professional comedian and public speaker, motivational speaker, and he's an Army veteran. And so he told me he wanted to give back to the organization, and he came up here and did a comedy night for us in Kirksville. And we raised quite a decent amount of money for our first one. And so now we're poised to do some more of those, and when his schedule allows. But he's pretty good. He's funny. He's clean, so it's a family friendly environment. Which is good for a lot of places, because a lot of people are kind of hesitant to go out. They don't want somebody who's real vulgar or nasty or whatever. So he's a good introduction for people to kind of a comedy show deal. But so we do a little bit. We dabble in a little bit of everything on the fundraising deal there. We solicit private donations, we solicit corporate partnerships and sponsorships. We do some merchandise sales. We're just kind of like every other little nonprofit out there. We're just trying to beat the bushes as much as we can, to get as much funding as we can to keep this lodge going and keep our farm going, and host as many hunters as we can. And like I said earlier, we deal with a lot of other landowners and a lot of outfitters and that kind of stuff, or charter fishing captains. And thank the Lord for them and their generous hearts. They donate a lot of that stuff to us. We're not paying large exorbitant outfitter fees or charter fishing fees. We've been very blessed in that situation where people are saying, hey, I want to give you a salmon fishing trip on Lake Michigan, or I want to give you an alligator hunt in Florida. So it's been good to be able to do that, because we wouldn't be able to do a lot of those things if we had to pay retail on some of these hunting and fishing trips.
I was just about to ask him when the golf tournament was. He didn't give us dates on that one. Oh, I thought we were. Oh, is he back?
Yep. Are you there?
There he is. What's the date on the golf tournament? Because I'm into golf now more than anything else. We had a podcast called "Am I Even an Outdoorsman Anymore?" Because all I do is think about golf. And he's.
Can you hear me?
Apparently, he doesn't want
frozen up.
Yeah, he's afraid.
I was eyeballing old LA Nickel. I drove past it today going, God, I need to get out there and swing them clubs again. It's been a long time.
There you are. Is that my end or your end?
I believe that was your end.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's all right. We were filling time talking about golf.
Yeah,
Because,
I'll tell Elon Musk to fix my Starlink real quick. But no, the golf tournament is going to be July 26th. It's the last Saturday of July, and it's a 2-man scramble, and it's up here at in La Plata, where there's a little municipal public golf 18-hole course in La Plata, and we get about 80. We've had almost 100, but we get around 80 guys on average to come, and we'll raise several $1,000s on a Saturday in a little redneck hick town in northern Missouri, and it's a good time. We have a lot of cool prizes. We don't really do anything as far as somebody does win, and, we give them a little prize, but we do a lot of raffles and silent auction kind of stuff, and it's more of a fun type tournament than it is, a big money deal for whoever wins it. But we're just trying to raise money to afford to send guys on hunting trips.
yeah, what's the buy-in for the 2-man scramble?
It's actually fairly cheap. It's $60 a person, so $120 a team, and we're able to do that because we have a lot of donations. We have we provide lunch, and we have a caterer that comes in and donates the meal to us. We give away free beverages, both adult and non-adult beverages, and we usually have a beverage sponsor. We actually say that they're sponsoring the beverage cart, not the actual beverages. But so we're able to keep our costs kind of low on that deal to try and entice more people to come. Northern Missouri is not a high fundraising type area necessarily as far as big ticket items. We'd rather have a lot of guys and give us some money than have 2 or 3 guys give us a lot of money. I mean, that kind of sounds weird, but it's an opportunity for guys to come and help us out that can't afford to donate thousands of dollars. The blue collar guy can come and pay $60 and buy 40 or $50 worth of raffle tickets, and he feels like he's contributing, and we do very well. So it's a good thing for us.
I'm putting it in my calendar.
Yeah.
I think that'd be fun, Brandon. 2-man scramble.
Yeah,
We should go up there and
absolutely.
play.
Absolutely.
We'd love to have you. It's a good time, and like I said, we give away free adult beverages, and we give free lunch, and so it's usually some type of barbecue or brisket or something that they bring in for us. But yeah, if you go to our website beforeoutdoors.com and then go down to the events tab, you can see the 3 fundraisers there, the 2 sporting clays, and then also the golf tournament. We'll be starting here shortly advertising the golf tournament on our social media.
Well, cool. We we got about maybe 15 minutes left, so change the topic a little bit. One thing that I saw that you have commented on and been involved in, Kevin, and being up there in Macon County, I'd like to get your take on it. The CWD issue, Shags and I are close to this, and we're working now on a plan to try to bring some more information to the public, maybe doing a series of CWD stories and trying to hear from people that are affected by it, meat processors,
Yeah,
taxidermists, landowners, and trying to get all sides to the story. Like you're gonna have a hard time swaying
so
us on the science. Like we're pretty firmly rooted with the side of science, but I know there are a lot of questions, and we're really looking to get engaged in meaningful and respectful conversations, which don't usually happen on Facebook. So
yeah,
we're gonna have some public
yeah. It's
forums and such. So yeah, I'm interested in, you said you understand some things, but you still have some questions. And um,
Well, actually, it's cool that you bring this up because I had lunch yesterday with Chad Smith, who's one of the deer biologists up here out of the Kirksville office at the MDC Kirksville office. And we talked for an hour and a half over lunch, and it was a great conversation. It was civil,
wait, you're
it
saying
was
somebody from
polite.
MDC was both willing to speak with you and listen to you? Oh man, according to
Correct,
Facebook,
correct.
that doesn't happen.
Yeah, And actually, so he saw my comments on the post that you put up, and he reached out to me and said, "Hey, anytime you want to get together, let's do it." So we had lunch yesterday and had a great conversation. And what I have found from that interaction and just my past experiences with CWD, um, propaganda, media, social media, whatever you want to call it, man, there's so much that people don't understand. There's so many half truths out there on the internet and on social media. That was one of the biggest things I said to Chad was, hey, look, MDC has a messaging problem. They don't do a very good job of getting the word out. And he said that he agreed. He said, it's hard when you're a biologist to try and communicate to the social media people or the communications people and try and get the message across. But so as a landowner, I'm in a hot zone. So we had a positive just under 2 miles from us
Well,
about 3
Macon
years
County
ago.
is ground
And,
zero
you
in
know,
Missouri, and we can
correct,
say
correct. But
unequivocally that it was first found in a high fenced facility in Macon
that's right.
County.
That's correct. And so, when we bought this farm, we knew it was CWD county. We knew that. But, we weren't considered in a hot zone. And like I said, 3 years ago, they had a positive hit just under 2 miles from here. And so now we're in that 2 mile square zone, hot area. And so there's just a lot of questions and a lot of unknowns about what the program is. And you hear, of course, oh, they're killing millions. Well, no, they're not. They've killed like 4,600 this year or whatever.
Well, that's
But
total,
it,
4,600
it's
total, I
it's
believe.
interesting. Right, exactly, across the entire state. And so, they're not killing millions of deer. They're not wiping out the herd. They're doing targeted, removals. And so on that property, he told me where they had that positive hit 3 years ago, he said 50% of the deer coming off that farm are positive. So, it's pretty tough. But anyway, so we just talked about a myriad of things, and it was a great conversation. Like, my thing the whole time, or not the whole time, but a lot of this is, why isn't the state of Missouri trying to come up with a live test? Let's not kill them. Let's keep them alive and test them. Well, he told me that there is a live test. There is a blood test that they can run down at Mizzou. MDC's been working down with the folks in Mizzou, and there's a blood test. The problem is it's really expensive and it's not economically feasible to do it, statewide. The targeted removal or the testing that they do
Yeah,
during gun season is the most economic way
but
to get a
I
lot
think
of,
one of the biggest
samples quickly.
misconceptions, though, and I don't know if you're kind of still in that bucket, is they're not necessarily culling deer in the hot zones just to collect samples. I mean, they are trying to reduce the number of deer in that hot zone. So that's a huge
Correct.
misconception that's out there
Yes.
on Facebook, is that they're killing deer, they're killing healthy deer to try to find sick deer. That's not the purpose. Like, the purpose is to
Correct.
thin down the number of deer in those
Correct.
areas so that the disease rate stays, within that containment zone to the best of, you know, I guess our hope or the ability to keep it there. Like, we know it can't stay there.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part, the conversations that you have to have with biologists and scientists about the fact that there really is no like answer. Like, it doesn't go away. It's not that we're trying to
Right.
get rid of it. It's that we're trying to keep
Exactly.
prevalence rates low until the miracle happens, which is there's some kind of vaccine that can be administered, in a way. But until then,
Well,
it's just
right. And that's where I was going with the live test. Is if I didn't understand that they'd been working with Mizzou to come up with a live test, because my thought process was, if we can get a live test, then we can come up with a vaccine or something, whatever it
yeah.
is to try and help this problem. So it was nice to find out that they are doing other things besides just culling deer. I mean, that's a misconception out there. So it was nice to learn that. Um, some other things that, to me, one of the more hypocritical things they do is the baiting to do the culling program. They are essentially doing what they tell us not to do, and we discussed that as well. And in a civil way, Chad was great, man. He was awesome. We had a great conversation. But he said that that is something that they do because they don't know, they're shooting these deer at night with thermals or whatever. And so, they have to bring them into a central location because they want to try and keep it as safe as possible as well. If they're shooting at night, they don't know if the landowner next
Right.
door is on his back 40 having a campfire, or whatever. So, there's a myriad of reasons why they do the baiting. Safety is one of them. And he did tell me, when the program's over with a landowner, the landowner may say, well, just kill five, target five. And once you're done with that, leave the rest of the herd alone. And he was telling me that they go and they clean up the corn pile and they shovel up the dirt and, remove all, evidence of them being there and that kind of stuff. So, what I really took from it, and I was never one of these guys that was total conspiracy theory on CWD. I just had questions about the program. And so Chad was great. He answered all my questions and we talked about a lot of things, and he informed me of, made me think about things from a different point of view. So it was good. And so, I mean, I definitely think there could be some changes and some different policies made, but we
Right.
definitely don't want to be Wisconsin. I mean, we don't get to the point where 50% of the deer in Missouri are positive, and then we're reducing,
And
bag
why that
limits, and
that
we're
should matter
reducing
to these
season
people
dates.
is
You know,
because there's so many things to unfold in this discussion, but the fact of the matter is, in Wisconsin, in other states like Kansas now, Northwest Arkansas, Wyoming, parts of Colorado, where
mhm.
prevalence rates are now over 20% in certain herds, like in certain areas. The population is gonna decline in age structure. So if it's antlers that you care about, which is what I think is driving a lot of this, I think we have the typical people that we've been watching for years that they look for any knife that they can stick into the department, whether it's captive deer, feral hogs, now CWD. They're just on the bus to destroy MDC because they can't, do the legal things that they want to do. They want anarchy. They don't want any kind of regulations. And they've always been this loud group of like crazy people. They still are. But what's unfortunately happening is they're finding a constituency to kind of yell with them in the antler crazed big buck hunters. And when a doe goes down over a corn
Mhm.
pile, that guy doesn't see a doe going down. He sees a Boone and Crockett buck in her womb. His buck just got killed. And it's like, well, if that buck would have got killed in archery season, or if that doe would have
Yeah,
got killed in archery season or muzzleloader season or any other season, she wouldn't have gave birth either. So it's the crowd that just wants to destroy MDC because they've just always wanted to destroy MDC. But now it's also these antler crazed people because they think that, every time they see somebody else kill a deer, every time a deer goes down, that was potentially, their glory in the future going down with it. We did the math in that podcast that
right.
I broke down the Doge hearing. Less than 0.7%, so less than 1% equivalent of the deer killed by hunters have been killed in this. In that same time period, more deer have been killed with vehicle collisions. Nobody cared when they were giving out, 10 tags to
Yeah,
a corn farmer or 20 tags to a soybean farmer because, they were depredation permits. It's just, you know, they see these deer getting killed and they think that's it, that's their trophy chance going away. And it's just unfortunate that, we have to do this at this point, because if we don't, then it takes 18 to 24 months for the disease to kill a deer. So even if you say, okay, it doesn't catch it until its first year, but then you're giving that deer, 3.5 years at most. And that's not a mature buck. That's not what these guys want to see anyway. So you talk to like Doug Dern up in Wisconsin, and he says that they used to only shoot 4.5-year-old plus. Now they only have 2.5-year-olds. Like the older age class is going away. And
Mm-hmm.
when you compound all the different ways deer die, mostly by hunters, vehicle collisions, disease, and now you throw on a disease that's going to kill every deer within 2 years of catching it, you're not going to have bucks older than 3.5 years. So everything that these guys are afraid of losing, by saying let's do nothing to see with CWD, that's exactly what you're going to lose. You're going to lose exactly what you're afraid of losing, and it's going to be your fault.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I mean, he was spitting out some numbers. I mean, 300,000 deer a year are killed by hunters. How many cars kill deer? I mean, geez, it's got to be in the hundreds of thousands as well. But, they killed 46 deer this year, or excuse me, 4,600 deer this year in the targeted program. I mean, it's not very many. And from what I understand, what Chad told me is if hunters would check in more deer on their own through the volunteer program, then they wouldn't have to do the targeted killing. So
Yeah. Well, one of the other misconceptions is people like, well, deer populations are growing in Wisconsin. Well, they are. Like, because you're not killing enough deer. Like, people aren't hunting as
right.
much anymore. Like, people aren't killing does. The people that are out there only for antlers aren't killing, their buck, because they passed them all up this year. They're not supplementing with doe harvest.
Well,
I can't remember exactly what that ratio is. We talked about it, but roughly 25% of the deer population has to be killed every year to
mm-hmm.
maintain the population level. You kill less than 25%, it goes up. You kill more than 25%, it goes down. MDC estimates we have 1.5 million deer now. I said 1.3 and I was corrected. It's more like 1.5. So to kill, that means we got to kill like 75,000 deer a year. No, that's not right. We got to kill, so 1.5 million divided by 2 is 750,000 divided by 2,
Yeah,
375,000 deer per year. And
no,
we're not doing that. So our population will continue to go up, but they'll phase out with a younger age class, and eventually it'll
yeah,
catch up with us.
yeah. I mean, we definitely can't do nothing. If we don't do anything, we're going to be in trouble. And so, but yeah, we talked about a lot of things and really opened my eyes. And there's just so many issues inside of this. It's very complex, and I didn't understand it all. That's why I had questions, and Chad was able to help me understand some of them. But there's a lot of stuff on the internet. There's videos from veterinarians and doctors and high fence guys, and they say put humic acid down in your ground and it'll solve the problem, or you can release genetically modified.
Look,
None
man,
of that
the
stuff
the
works.
the high fence guys, are a huge part of the
Oh
reason
yeah.
why we're here. Like, CWD positive deer were moved from facility to facility to facility, as breeder bucks. And if those guys now are trying to tell you they can sell you something that actually is a cure, then you must be the same guy that bought like penile growth pills from the back of a Playboy in the 1980s, because
Yeah,
that's what you're buying. You're buying
yeah,
absolute
yeah.
bullshit. Like, it
That
ain't real.
that's the issue. That's part of what MDC is fighting are those videos and those websites. And you know
Oh yeah.
those videos those guys put out, not just the high fence guys, but the Dr. Deer stuff, or the veterinarian guy that or geneticist from Mizzou, I forget what his name is, that put out the video that said it was a cholesterol similar to dementia. I mean, all that stuff is very believable. And so, I've watched those videos and I've thought to myself, wow, that makes sense. But, until you,
Yeah, it's because those guys are washed up
right.
pseudo celebrity hunters that are grasping at whatever they can do
Yeah.
to stay relevant. Like these guys that were part of this like craze that essentially ruined hunting over the last 20 years, that at one time 1,000 people watched their garbage TV show, and then twice a year they'd go to a trade show and people would come up to them and act like they were some kind of celebrity, but then they go out to Walmart and nobody
Right.
knows who they are. Like those guys are so desperate for relevance that they're willing to do anything, and they're willing to walk this right off the cliff if it means that they can maintain a few
Yeah.
more likes on Facebook and pretend like they've
Yeah,
done
but I mean,
something.
I had a great opportunity yesterday to talk to one of the top biologists out of the Kirksville office, and got a lot of answered questions, and it was really cool to talk to him about it. And I suggest that's what people do: call your local MDC office, and or call the state office in Columbia or Jeff City or wherever it is. I don't even know where their headquarters is, but talk to those guys. They'll fill you in. They'll tell you they don't want to do it. They're all deer hunters and conservationists, and they don't enjoy doing the targeted killings, but it's
No, they
so
hate it.
you know
So and that's another thing. These guys that are like
We got
jealous
Brandon
that these
all
guys are
riled up,
going
yeah.
out.
man. He brought up
Yeah.
the CWD, and I'm sitting here with the mystery bait bucket question,
Yep.
waiting for an opportunity
Yep.
to jump in. And Kevin has a good
Well,
point,
I'll
and
just
then I'm
end
like,
it. Yeah.
and then Brandon goes on a big rant again.
Well,
Well, all right. Let's do some mystery bait
We
you
need
know,
buckets.
to do a CW. We need to do a CWD podcast
yeah,
where we can have some experts in here, and you guys can. Because I'm with you. I agree with everything you're saying, but it just made me laugh that we've kind of bookend this podcast with railing about selling our public lands, and then railing about former deer hunter celebrities that aren't getting recognized in Walmart now. But what you see
Poor
what
bastards.
you see in front of you is an antique bait bucket. We got it at the Midway Antique Mall here in Columbia, and it's questions submitted by friends, fans, family, anybody who wants to be a part of the podcast. You can email us info@driftwoodoutdoors.com, or send us a message, or put it in the comments on YouTube, Driftwood Outdoors TV. Very rarely does it have anything to do with the outdoors, but sometimes it does. This one comes from Pat Bennett. If you could teleport anywhere right now, where would you go?
Oof.
Oh, I know immediately. Oh, the
Where are you
mountains of
going?
Bolivia to chase golden dorado in those tiny little boulder streams. I would be, yeah, there.
wow.
We'll be chasing golden dorado in
Argentina, yes,
less than a year and a half. Yeah.
but
Here.
The Bolivia mountains would be where I could teleport. I wouldn't even have to ride in a helicopter or anything. That would be incredible. My fear of heights wouldn't get in the way. I could just snap my finger and be in the water with my fly rod. It would be awesome.
I'd go to Mexico for oscillated turkey hunt.
Oh, there you go.
That's fun. I've done it. I've got one. It's a great time. I think I would teleport to Patagonia. I'm pretty serious about seeing Patagonia now. I think I'm gonna try to extend our trip to Argentina and tack on. We'll do the Golden Dorado, and then I might take off and go down to Patagonia and bounce around for a week as well.
That would be fun for sure.
Cool.
All right. Well, what's the final thought, the final cast of the pod?
Well, I appreciate what you're doing, man. Like it's cool to see people like take a vision, make it a reality, and be in service to others. It's easy to sit here and tell people that you don't make as much money doing this kind of work, but it really does lift you up, and I get to feel that every day, and I like talking to other people that do that as well. So I'm in the arena with you, and I appreciate you being there, and God bless you for what you're
Well, thank
doing.
you.
And Kevin, Kevin, before you get off here, I want you to hit all your socials, to where people can find you, and your website, and I'll put it in the show links as well. I just want to say thanks for hopping on, man. It was very informative, super cool organization. Didn't know anything about it before we came in here, and the quick finals cram session I did right before we got on, and then talking to you, like, I'm all in, I'm sold. I got it in my calendar. I want to come up and play some golf and maybe possibly get a tour of your guys' facility one day. It'd be really
Certainly.
cool. And if you need anything from us, you just let us know.
Cool. Well, thank you for the opportunity, and I just enjoy getting on and talking about hunting and talking about helping people because it's there's a lot of organizations that do similar stuff to what we do, and so it's a battle every day to get our message out. So having this opportunity is priceless. We appreciate it very much. But yeah, you can find us on social media, Instagram and Facebook mostly. Both of them are under B4 Outdoors, the letter B, the number 4, and Outdoors. And then we do have a Twitter account, but it's pretty fledgling. I don't post on there very often, but it's also under B4 Outdoors. And then our website is b4outdoors.com. You can learn all about our events. You can see pictures from our past events and stuff like that. So there's links on there for fundraising. If you feel compelled to donate, there's some links on there as well. So, we just ask that if you can't give to us, give to somebody that has a similar mission statement. And if you can't do that, then just, take your local veteran out fishing. It doesn't have to be some super duper $80,000 bass boat. If you got a farm pond and you got a veteran or first responder at your church or at your gym, just invite them out for a day of fishing. It's amazing what that'll do for those guys.
That's awesome. Thanks again, man. Gear review coming up next. Brandon, end of the podcast, the beginning of the gear review. What are you reviewing for us today?
Man, I'm excited today. I'm excited because me and the Pope probably both share a deep affection for Mike Singletary, the middle linebacker of the 1986 Bears, the greatest football team ever assembled on any level. I'm sure the Pope was throwing up a few Hail Marys. It wasn't perfect because Walter Payton didn't score in the Super Bowl, but Shags brought me this back from Oregon as a thank you for watching Duke. It's got the rookie card of Hall of Famer Mike Singletary along with the figurine. And, if I ever meet Pope Leo, maybe I'll gift it to him. And, you know, I'm sure he probably has a Bears jersey on under his robe today. And, I would watch out. The rest of the football world needs to watch out. The Bears might not lose again for the next 15 to 20 years.
Oh,
And I got this beautiful poster. This is a wonderful thank you gift also from Shags and Savannah. A river runs through it poster. While Shags was gone, Paddle Down and I were left in charge, and we completely screwed up an interview with the son of Norman McLean, the author of A River Runs Through It, John McLean. So Paddle Down and I got to talk to him for about an hour and a half. It was a wonderful podcast. I'm sorry none of you will ever hear it, but we'll redo another one now that the big guy's back to control the IT side of things for us. So thank you for those wonderful gifts. It was very timely. Pope down.
and that was actually a 1992 original movie
Dude.
poster. That is not a reprint. And now
Well,
anymore.
this has got to be way before 19. I mean, this is his rookie card. It says 1990.
Yeah, that's a 1990.
Edition.
Yeah, the poster's a
Oh,
1992.
but the rookie card's 1981.
Yep.
All right. What do you got?
Well, for mine, I think I may have done this already, but again, going down to the Polish embassy and going to have to weed eat like waist high, tall grass. I've been doing nothing but huffing Sawyer Prometherin because I literally, you haven't been seeing me, but my pants and my clothes are on a chair over here, and I've just been squirting them throughout the podcast to get it in there. So when I go down this weekend, go down tomorrow, and I'm weed eating my lawn because it's too tall to mow, I won't have to worry about ticks. Because man, how many people do we know personally that have that alpha gal now? Like it's getting.
Dude, I got tick bite, right? See that red dot right there? I got tick bite in Martha's Vineyard, and it all swelled up real bad.
Man,
Hate them.
I already got an autoimmune disorder with Crohn's. Like, I'm not trying to get Lyme or that alpha gal where you can't enjoy red meat. And so, yes, permethrin, Sawyer, soaking all my stuff in it so I can hopefully be tick free this weekend while I'm doing yard work down at the Polish Embassy.
We'll see you down the trail.